In this video, we are going to be talking all about beginner fish, and in specific we're going to be talking about some of the worst options that people commonly recommend to a lot of beginners in this hobby when it comes to getting fish for their aquarium. I've been in this hobby for a reasonably long time, about 8 years, and in my 8 years of experience, I've learnt a lot about different types of fish and different species within this beautiful hobby. Now in today's video, there are going to be a few things on this list that I don't want people to get too upset about, because when I'm talking about all these fish, I'm not telling you not to buy them, and some of these fish are also going to be on lists that I've made previously. The reason I'm making this video is to be a disclaimer for a lot of people before they consider getting a lot of these species. So I don't hate all of these fish. Every one of these fish can be a great beginner fish, but some of them just have some things that a lot of people don't know and they need to know before they get them. So we're going to start off with a fish that I think a lot of people can get into a lot of trouble with, and this is going to be plecos. Now, I'm not talking about bristlenose plecos, I'm talking about your bigger plecos, like your sailfins and your commons and everything like that. A lot of the time when these guys are sold in pet shops, they normally come in very small and they're similarly sized to a lot of bristlenose plecos. People will pick them up and the person who catches out that fish doesn't really know what you're going to do with it. They look very similar to bristlenose and people probably think they're going to be buying bristlenose, but in about a year, it becomes very obvious that this fish is not a bristlenose. Common plecos get massive and can cause just a lot of issues in a small aquarium when they're normally put into them. So unless you have like a huge monster fish aquarium, I'd say at least 4 foot, I'd go even bigger than that, like 6 foot. You're going to have a lot of problems with this fish, and a lot of the time they can be sold as a beginner fish. I'd just completely stay away from these guys. I wouldn't really delve into getting plecos until much later unless you're into monster fish. Just be careful. The second worst beginner fish, in my opinion, is going to be neon tetras. Now, neon tetras have their place in the hobby. They are a beautiful fish. They can be very easy to take care of, and these guys have actually been known to live up to 8 to 10 years when taken care of properly. The reason I say these guys are a terrible beginner fish is not for the fact that they're difficult to take care of, but more for the fact that the quality of neon tetras within the market at the moment just doesn't seem to be that great. A lot of neon tetras have like this microbacterium that kind of comes in with them when they come into an importer, and it's similar to like a fish tuberculosis, but not a lot of people really know what it is. This disease is commonly called neon tetra disease, and I think a lot of beginners here who've kept neon tetras would be familiar with this. Basically, it's just a white kind of tumorish disease that rocks up on a neon tetra over time. A lot of my neon tetras that I've bought that aren't locally bred have had this issue, pretty much all of them, and just over time it eventually kills off all the neon tetras, and it's really kind of depressing. So a lot of the time I kind of keep beginners away from getting this species. They're produced in massive quantities all across the world in their millions, and because of this disease just spreads like fire, and a lot of the time beginners are going to buy this fish, kill it, and although it is cheap, it is depressing and it's discouraging for a lot of beginners. And the other thing too about this disease is it's not really treatable. So I'd stay away from neon tetras unless you can find a really good source of them, or if you're going to buy neon tetras, buy 20 but be prepared to lose 15 of them and only be able to keep 5. Just never buy neon tetras with any signs of this disease on them. And yeah, this is just a disclaimer for the neon tetra. The next fish on this list is definitely going to get people commenting, but I don't care. I wouldn't make this video if I cared. The next fish on this list is going to be guppies. So similarly to the neon tetras, have a lot of issues when it comes to importing them into people's countries and people's shops. Guppies are produced in massive quantities all across the world. They're super popular, and they 100% have their place in the hobby. In fact, guppies were the first thing that I got, and I had a lot of success with them. Now, what I've noticed is there's a really big difference between good quality guppies and bad quality guppies. A lot of the time, guppies come in with internal parasites, which will end up becoming a problem about a month after you've got them, because the guppies will become skinny and get really bad at swimming and just die off that way. And these internal parasites kind of stay within aquarium systems for a very long time unless you treat the aquariums with medications, which a lot of beginners shouldn't be having to do. Another issue with guppies is they don't live a very long time. Most of the time, by the time they come into our aquarium, they're kind of nearly already dead. So guppies are only going to live for a very short period of time before they eventually pass on when we get them, unless you get them as babies or very, very young fish, but most of the time this doesn't happen. So guppies will survive in an aquarium, and they can be slightly easy for a lot of people to keep, but there's a lot of things that people need to learn about how to properly care for guppies before they get them. And in my opinion, a beginner fish should be something that you just throw into an aquarium and kind of could forget about. And for me, guppies just don't seem to be like that. Unless you find really good quality ones that are locally bred, which I'd recommend doing. If you buy them from an imported source, I think you're going to run into a lot of issues. So That's why number 3 on this list is guppies. Number 4 is a fish that I haven't personally kept, so I don't want people saying that I don't really know what I'm doing. And the reason I'm saying this is because I haven't kept them for a reason. And the next fish on this list is going to be Oscars. So Oscars are a really cute fish that we see in shops. Most of the time you'll see them very small, like as babies, but sometimes you'll see them big. Oscars are a very easy fish to take care of, and they'll eat anything you put in the aquarium. They're very easy to take care of. They are a beginner fish, but the reason I put them on this list is not for the fact that they're not easy to take care of and they're not a beginner fish. Every fish on this list has its place for some beginner, but a lot of people don't realize how big these fish actually get. And it's similar to the Plecos, where you're going to need quite a lot of space to take care of one of these guys properly. When I first saw Oscars, I was like a 13-year-old kid in a fish shop. I saw a cute little albino Oscar, like it was so cute, and I was so tempted to buy that fish, but if I bought it, it would have gone into my 20-gallon tank, outgrown it in about a month, and then I would have had a big problem on my hands. So a lot of the time people need to really understand what they're getting into when they buy fish, and an Oscar isn't going to suit a lot of people who want to just keep a small 20-gallon aquarium in their home. Unless you're getting a big tank, Oscars, I'd completely stay away from them just because of the size issues, and they're going to produce a lot of waste as well, so they can be quite a big cleanup job as well. Number 5 on my list is something that I think a lot of beginners can have success with, but there's a lot of disclaimers with this fish. So I've recommended this to a lot of people who've started out in the hobby, and this fish is going to be the angelfish. Angelfish are, in some ways, a really, really good beginner fish because they're easy to take care of if they come from a really good source. A lot of the time, you can either keep them in bigger groups or just by themselves and they're going to do great. Sometimes people will buy like 2 or 3 of them, and angelfish aren't angels. They can be really aggressive. Like angelfish, in my opinion, have been one of the most aggressive fish that I've kept. Not really to other fish, but more or less to each other. And unless there's like 6 or 8 angelfish around them, they're going to end up bullying one angelfish and killing it. I'd recommend angelfish to pretty much everyone who's watching this video, as long as you only keep one angelfish by itself or you keep a group of at least 6. If you have a group of 6, they're not going to be able to really attack each other because their attention's always going to be super divided. But people who buy like 2, 3, or even 4 of them, once they reach sexual maturity, they're going to start really beating each other up, and this will just end up becoming an issue for you. Another issue that I've noticed recently with angelfish that might not be applicable to other people in the world is this weird kind of wasting away disease that comes from importers as well. Sometimes when I deliver fish that I've bred to other shops and they get mixed in with the imported angelfish, the imported angelfish carry a disease that kills off a lot of the fish, and it's always important to make sure that you're not buying a fish that's like got clamped fins and isn't swimming confidently. You want really aggressive angelfish that have really prominent fins and look really good. And then number 6 on the list is going to be goldfish. Again, like all the other species on this list, this does have its place for some people. Goldfish can be great for a lot of people who want to keep 1 or 2 of them in a big aquarium and want to constantly clean up poop. Goldfish create massive amounts of waste that people aren't aware of when they buy these fish. Goldfish are one of those things where you just want to keep them by themselves in like a 55-gallon tank and just watch them grow up, and you just want to feed them and kind of look at them. Unless you're keeping your goldfish like that, they don't really have a place for a lot of beginner situations. You're not going to be able to keep goldfish really easily in a 20-gallon tank because eventually they just grow out of it. In my opinion, just goldfish aren't a great beginner fish. They're commonly available. I mean, they're everywhere. And when everyone kind of gets into fish keeping, it does start off with goldfish. People have to be aware they create massive amounts of waste. They're a huge cleanup job, and you can't keep them in planted aquariums. So a lot of the time you're really capped by what you can do with goldfish, and sadly, when I see a lot of people start out with goldfish, they end up selling them once they get really big. Unless you're in it for the long haul, goldfish aren't a really great beginner fish. If you want to get a goldfish, I'd kind of recommend maybe getting a betta. There's a lot more things that you can do with a betta, like you can add different tank mates to the tank, and I don't know, I just don't recommend goldfish. This is just my opinion, so yeah. And finally, we're going to finish off with a fish that I actually do want to start breeding very soon in a couple of little breeding projects, but it's something that a lot of people need to be aware of, and this is going to be barbs. Barbs can be really good beginner fish. They're very easy to take care of. They stay relatively small, and they do look fantastic, a lot of the different types. Barbs can be quite aggressive, and if they're with fish that have long fins in the tank, so like angelfish, even guppies and stuff like that, these guys will just end up bullying those fish or biting their fins, and they can be quite aggressive. Most of the time you have to be very careful when you get barbs. They are sold as community fish, but in my opinion aren't an excellent community fish. They're not as peaceful as I'd like a beginner fish to be. So before you get them, just make sure you don't have angelfish with massive long fins or fish with long fins in that tank. and I'd kind of recommend just keeping barbs by themselves, to be honest. I know a lot of people in this video are going to say, well, I keep this fish with this one, like whatever, that's great. I'm just trying to spread some of my limited knowledge in this hobby so that they can at least avoid making really big mistakes with their fish keeping. Barbs can be really good, but like I said, they do have some aggression issues that aren't really the best for a lot of beginners. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. Please leave a like down below if you did enjoy this video. If you didn't enjoy this video, I don't know, dislike the video and leave your angry comment, but I'll see you guys in the next video.